So I've been talking about the Final Destination movies this month, and I feel I have a complicated relationship with that series. I like them all, but it's always kind of hard to point at one and say this is the best one. There's always like an angle you can kind of take. Like, you might want to say the first one. It was the original that came up with this idea. Has the incredibly intense airplane crash sequence. But as I've mentioned before, it kind of struggles with its tone. Doesn't know if it wants to be a serious movie or a goofy kind of movie. And you could even say the second one, because it probably does have the best deaths of the series. And if that's kind of what you're looking for, I mean, hey, there it is. But the plot of the movie gets a little ridiculous with its complex loopholes and the whole plot about, trying to save the newborn baby and all that. And it gets a little bit silly there, and connecting the characters from that movie to the original movie through kind of silly ways. And there's that. And even like 3 and 4... I do give them a lot of credit for kind of just cutting to the chase and becoming more comedies, more kind of oriented on how we're going to see these people die next, and kind of let loose on the plot aspects a little bit, so keep it to a minimum there. But, I don't know, none you could really say is the absolute best. Well, I'm here to say that Final Destination 5 is the best Final Destination movie. In my opinion, I think it's the best. It's my favorite. I think it's the one that perfectly balances the tone of being somewhat serious, of being suspenseful, of having some great death scenes, some really incredible scenes actually, and having a little bit of humor to it too. So I think it balances all that incredibly. I think it's a great movie. I think it's the best one. And I think, going into it, we have a good cast of characters. Like, there are characters that we kind of feel for, we invest in a little bit. Like, there's the bare minimum kind of stuff. Like, we have an aspect to the plot where they're not so much like the high school teenager kind of characters that have been in the previous movies. They're a little bit older. They're in the workforce. They're, working at this business as interns, and we have the plot aspect of the guy with his girlfriend. They're kind of on the rocks, and all that kind of stuff, and it works fine. I think we can invest in the characters just fine. I do think there's a good cast, too. Supporting-wise, I mean, there's Courtney B. Vance playing a detective who's really good in his role, and David Koechner playing the boss of this office, which I thought was funny. And I do think they all do a good job. Even with, like, the Miles Teller character, like, we have an aspect of the plot where his girlfriend is killed, and throughout the movie we have this kind of descent into madness, which I think works pretty well, actually. Like, he becomes such a liability to these kids. And unlike the previous movie, I mean, basically it starts with a disaster, as we all see. This time it's a bridge collapse, and the one guy, he has the premonition, he stops it all, blah, 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 and that stuff. After that, the characters don't really catch on as quickly as some of the others do. They're like, oh, wait, I heard about this before. No, they actually kind of really slowly begin to... I think 40 minutes into the movie, they even begin to realize that they're in a Final Destination movie, basically, which I think kind of works pretty well. And of course, it takes the tried and true coroner character to give them a little bit of exposition. And what I like best about the movie is kind of the aspect they bring to it. In all these movies, they try to find the loopholes, they try to cheat death. Here is something very, very interesting that they bring. As the coroner explains, you've caused a rift in space and time. You should not be here. You cheated death. But if you kill someone, you take their life. You have balanced the universe. And so now all of a sudden we have characters who are like, holy shit, could I kill somebody to recapture my own life? And I think that's a good conflict that we bring to the character. I can't believe it took 5 movies to get to something like that. All this crazy shit that they put through all the previous movies about, looking at the specific order and looking at hints and looking at, newborn babies or whatever. Finally, something so succinct and so sensical that it fits perfect. I think it's an ingenious kind of twist to the movie. And then with the Miles Teller character, kind of get a little bit nervous, and he becomes kind of an antagonist as the movie draws to its conclusion, even more than some of the other characters we've seen before. We've seen the characters who kind of create conflict within the groups of survivors, but here I think it almost turns into like a straight out thriller, which is great. So I thought they did an exceptional job with that. And really, I mean, the reason you're going to see the movie is for the death and destruction and all that, and I think it hasn't been better than it is in this film. I mean, the opening sequence with the bridge collapse, it's not only intense with some good gore and shocking, almost kind of funny stuff, but it's pretty impressive production wise. I mean, this is a director. He hasn't done much. I forget the director's name. Eric. Oh no, Stephen Quayle. Eric Hessler's the writer. Stephen Quayle. He did some work on Avatar as a visual effects supervisor. So I think that's kind of where he honed in on that craft and kind of maybe gave them some insight on how to accomplish special effects for a horror movie type of budget, which aren't always that big. So I think the special effects are on the screen with that sequence, and even the death scenes I think there's really good. There's the gymnast girl who's, you know, it becomes this whole thing like it is in the other movies of, okay, how's this going to happen? And there's like misdirects, but what that scene with the gymnast does so brilliantly, it has sort of misdirects, but you notice that everything comes together to finally result in this character's grisly death. So while it does kind of have that engaging kind of thing, that, oh, how they're going to die kind of thing, I don't think it does it in a cheesy, cheap kind of way. Like with something like, say, the previous movie, Final Destination 4, which is a fine scene, but there's like this whole long drawn out scene at the barber shop where, you know, a fan falls and then something completely unrelated happens. Here, there's little pieces to the puzzle that all come together, which I think was a brilliantly composed, thrilling horror scene. And it does kind of keep you on the edge of your seat. It's like, oh my god, what's going to happen? And the laser eye surgery scene, oh my god, terrifying. So I don't know, they create good suspense within these scenes, and it is both funny and suspenseful at the same time. So I thought they did a great job in accomplishing all that. And even one of the things I've been always kind of in the back of my head hoping for in like a Final Destination movie, I kind of got here to a small extent, and it's that I've always wanted to see like the forensics officers like trying to figure out what happened, because like in all these movies there's always something, you know, all these like little tiny coincidental things that happen. And you're like, you just kind of picture like of the investigating officers going like, what the fuck happened here? And that's basically what we get here. And like the detective, Courtney B. Vance, he's like, well, forensics, can you tell me what went on here? So, damned if I know. I think that's funny. So I think it's kind of a clever thing. And much like with the first movie, they brought in kind of the law aspect to it because, yeah, it's kind of a red flag that we would have a character who moments before a big disaster happens screams there's a big disaster going to happen. So they had that with the Daniel Roebuck character in the first film. So they kind of bring that element of the plot back with Courtney B. Vance, and I thought it was effective. And he's kind of talking back and forth with the David Koechner character and things like that. He's doing like special ops work and things of that nature. And I think it works great. I think it is an excellent Final Destination movie. This is it. This is the movie that got everything right, I think, in the Final Destination movie. So it's, while the contrast of, you know, the seriousness and the goofiness of the first film kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, here I don't think it's all too serious, but just serious enough to take it seriously as, say, like a thriller, as opposed to, you know, a deep, dark movie about survivor's guilt or something like that, but still having goofy scenes. Like we have the goofy character and, you know, the massage parlor, which is clearly, I mean, a comedic scene and things like that. So I think it balanced everything quite well. And, well, I mean, I guess this whole review is a spoiler review, but one of the things it does absolutely brilliantly is the ending, and there's like little hints to it all along the way. You're kind of thinking, oh, well, why does this person have this like flip cell phone that looks like it's from 2000? Why are they making a Lisa Loeb reference? She hasn't been relevant in a while. And we find out, and again, this whole plot line, it's in front of us the whole time, about the main character and his girlfriend. You know, he's gonna go to Paris to culinary school, but she doesn't know she wants to come with him, and he's gonna break up with her, or she's gonna break up with him because she doesn't want to work out, well, whatever. They finally decide, hey, baby, we're going to Paris. they're on the same flight as Devon Sawa from the first movie, who gets off the flight and panics, and they're like, "What's going on there?" and things like that. So it all goes one loop. I thought that was brilliant. I remember the first time I saw it. I didn't catch it in theaters, but the first time I saw it on Blu-ray, I was just like clapping at that. That was brilliant. And a great ending song. AC/DC once more makes an appearance in the Final Destination series on the soundtrack. So I love it. I don't know. Final Destination has its ups, has its downs. I don't think any of them are particularly bad movies. I think they're good in their own certain types of ways. But the one that I will say is the absolute best is Final Destination 5. That's my opinion. Comment below if you agree with me. Or am I totally crazy? I don't know. But thanks so much for watching. That's my review of Final Destination 5 and the Final Destination series as a whole. Still 31 days of horror, though. Plenty more horror movie reviews to come, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And stay scared.